Welcome back to my channel. It has been forever and we're just not even going to talk about it, and we're going to skip right over it. But today I thought it would be fun. I haven't done anything beauty related in an incredibly long time, so I thought it would be really fun to do some makeup with you guys. And this week I saw that Bailey Sarian, who I am absolutely obsessed with, came out with her trailer for her new content, Dark History, that's gonna be coming on Wednesdays. So if you didn't know that, it's coming out June 2nd, I think, and I'm uber excited about it. But I watch her every single Monday when she does Murder, Mystery, and Makeup Monday, religiously. If she has a video, I am watching it. I've seen them all. And I thought, ooh, I'll recreate a Bailey look because I'm obsessed and I love makeup. So I went through her Instagram and I found a picture I liked, and I thought I'll recreate that image. And then I thought, ooh, what would be even more fun to recreate Bailey is while I do the makeup, I'll tell a true crime story. So this is all in good fun. This is not what my channel is becoming, but I thought, again, it would be really fun in honor of Bailey in general to tell a story while I try to do this look, because it is just an Instagram picture. I don't have an actual tutorial of hers to follow. Like a lot of YouTubers do when they recreate somebody else's look. So I'm going to tell a story while I do it. I am actually going to do a story that happened in 1898. I thought it would be fun to do a really, really old story, again, in honor of Bailey's new series coming out with Dark History and, you know, kind of going back. So I picked a story that was older and I hadn't seen anybody cover it yet. So yeah, absolutely stick around and let's get going. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the murder of Mr. James Collins. Also, I might look down in this way quite a bit because this is where my products are, and I'm sorry, I'm also not a professional. So while I'm pretending to be Bailey, I'm not Bailey. Yes, the murder of James Collins. So this murder took place in May of 1898. The Collins family lived in Topeka, Kansas, and James, the father, husband, the man of the house, he was a very prominent citizen of Topeka, not only just in the town, but the whole state of Kansas. He was very well known, very loved, very liked. They lived in this beautiful home, pretty well off, and like I said, everybody loved them. James had 2 children with his first wife, John and Grace, and when his wife passed away, he remarried to Helen, so that is now Mrs. Collins, who also had a son from, you know, her previous marriage. I think she was married, I couldn't find exactly, but her son's name was Gage. So Mrs. Collins, his wife, is said to be a woman of very strong personality. She is quite intelligent, refined, and incredibly attractive is what everyone says. Grace, his daughter, was also said to be quite intelligent, very slender, pretty. No one had really ill words to say about anyone in the family, but apparently the women were very attractive and very smart. And then John was actually away in Lawrence. He was away at college and he was studying to join the ministry. Also, nobody had ill will to say about him. Everybody loved him. He was kind of seen he was very social. He did come back to Topeka to visit his parents, usually on Sundays and holidays. Sorry, I really have to I guess in May of 1898 they also had a visitor to the home, makeup and talk, that was Helen Gillespie, and this was Mrs. Collins' 7-year-old niece. So Gage, I'm assuming this is a niece from her first marriage because it was her niece and not their niece. He was off and away, but she was coming to stay with them for a little bit. Did I say Gage? His name is Grant. We have now in the house, Mr. and Mrs. Collins. But his name is Grant. Their daughter Grace and Helen. But he was off, and as I said, John as a railroad conductor. So I didn't find too much information on him, but he was definitely gone out of the house. May 12th of 1898, older and kind of had a life of his own. Mr. and Mrs. Collins go out for some entertainment. just
Grand.
a night out,
Not
husband
age.
and wife,
My
enjoy
bad.
the town. I
So,
don't know
at the
exactly
time
what they
everything
did,
was
but just to recap,
they had
if you have
money,
Mr.
so
and
who
Mrs.
knows?
Collins, as well
They
as
were
their
enjoying
daughter Grace,
living
that
that
lived
life,
in
right?
the home. All right. Their son John is off at college in Lawrence, and Grant is away being a railroad conductor. Okay, so there's really only Mr. and Mrs. Collins and Grace that permanently live in the house, and John comes and goes. John was heading back from Lawrence on this night. He was coming to stay. So when Mr. and Mrs. Collins got back to the house, Grace, their daughter, had turned in already, and they briefly spoke to John as he had just gotten there. They talked to him for a second. He went and played the piano for a few minutes, went and smoked a cigar, and then went up to his room for bed as well. And then Mr. and Mrs. Collins stayed up for a little bit longer, went to bed themselves. Mr. and Mrs. Collins' bed was on the ground floor, so the main level, and both Grace and John's room were upstairs. Now, from what I read, it was kind of conflicting. Grace's room was obviously, there was one room, it was her permanent room because she still lived at the house. And then John, when he came home, I guess he had a typical room that he stayed in, on like one side of the upstairs, but on this night he stayed in a different room. I don't know if this was like normal or just something he did on this specific occasion. I couldn't find that information. But kids are upstairs, as well as Helen, the 7-year-old niece. She is also upstairs, and Mr. and Mrs. Collins downstairs. Okay. Around 5 a.m., Mrs. Collins is awoken by the clock. Like, she remembers hearing the 5 o'clock alarm or 5 o'clock bells or charms or whatever those clocks do, whatever you call that, around 5 a.m. and then falling back to sleep like really quickly after. Just within minutes, she went right back to bed. So this was really helpful in kind of figuring out when things went down, because she does remember 5 a.m. happening and her husband was fine next to her. It couldn't have been but moments later, after she fell back asleep, that somebody entered their bedroom and shot Mr. Collins in the abdomen. Mr. Collins, I guess, obviously in pain and startled by this, wakes up and starts to raise up when the intruder shoots him in between the shoulder and the neck, breaking his clavicle basically. It also says that some of the, it doesn't say shots, but just like part of the shots. So the murder weapon was a shotgun, so I'm assuming like something that came off the bullet hit Mrs. Collins in the shoulder as well, but she was never like directly shot. And then the intruder immediately runs out of the room, drops the gun that he used in the hall, and runs up the stairs. So Helen, Mrs. Collins, obviously immediately just rushes to his bedside to see how, you know, if he's okay, what she can do, and she just sees blood like pouring from his body, and she knows like this is not good. So she starts screaming for John and Grace upstairs. So Grace and John run down the stairs together into their parents' room where they see what has happened. Grace then immediately runs to a neighbor's house that is a good friend of the family. John runs back upstairs to get dressed. I don't know, I'm assuming like if most men, he probably, you know, sleeps in his boxers or something. So he decides he needs to be clothed first. So he runs upstairs and gets dressed, and then he also goes to the neighbor that Grace is at. They go there so that the neighbor can call, you know, for the doctor, which they do. And then they return back to the house. The neighbor makes sure that the doctor, you know, gets the message and is arriving and doing all of that, and then goes to the house. Within this time also, because, you know, a lot has happened and there's a big ruckus, of course, happening at the Collins house, and these are very well-known prominent people, so everybody knows them. So tons of neighbors are showing up at the house, obviously, and the police are notified. I couldn't find exactly who, you know, notified the police or got the police, but they were notified, and they got there within like 10 minutes of finding out. So pretty much the town is now at the Collins house, it sounds like, as well as the police. It is 5:30 at this point. So if you remember, Mrs. Collins remembers waking up at 5. So all of this has happened within 30 minutes. That's why we said, like, we know it was like a really short time span because she woke up when she did. Like, things were happening fast. So as soon as the police get there, they obviously are searching the house, and, you know, from what is being told to them, they're you know, this is clearly a homicide, something crazy's happened. So they immediately start searching the house for anything looking suspicious, and, you know, just in general, it's a crime scene. So and two big things stand out to them right away. Mr. and Mrs. Collins usually, or always, slept with 2 pistols under their pillows. Like, each one of them had a pistol that was under their pillow. I can imagine, I guess, again, being very prominent and wealthy, they were worried about burglars maybe. I mean, to sleep with it under your pillow, I would assume. But it was always there, apparently. This was well known, I guess, and they were not there. And Mrs. Collins had no idea, you know, she assumed that they were there because they never moved them. They also, their closet, which was an extremely high closet. So yes, this was in 1898, and so a lot of places didn't have closets or very big closets, but again, these are extremely wealthy people. So this closet was apparently very, very large. Not only was the closet itself extremely large, the ceilings were incredibly high in this house, and that included the closets. So they were like a very high closet. And on the very top shelf of the closet, something you could not reach without like a step stool or something, it was that high, they kept a shotgun, and it was kept in a leather gun case. The ammunition was also kept on the shelf, but they never kept it in the gun. It was always separate on the shelf, and then the gun was in the case. Not only was it kept in the case, but every time Mr. Collins used the gun, when he was done, he was like intense about the fact that it was taken completely apart, it was cleaned, and it was put away, taken apart. So he didn't put it back together. He would put it in the case in its pieces until the next time he wanted to use it. And apparently he had not used it anytime recently. So that gun is missing, as well as the 2 pistols under the case and the pillowcases. And that seems to be all that is missing or touched in the entire home. And again, these are wealthy people with lots of valuables, lots of jewelry, things just laying around, and nothing was touched or moved except for these 3 guns, okay? The police also then determined very quickly that the gun, like I said, after the intruder came in and shot Mr. Collins, he ran out, he dropped the gun in the hall before he ran upstairs. So they had the gun, right? And it was a shotgun, and come to find out, it was actually their shotgun. So it was the shotgun that was kept in their closet, in this case, in their own room, which is also very odd, right? So then they do an even more extreme, intense search of the house. The police do. They're like, okay, we've got to get like with it, right? And they search and search and search, and they can still not find these pistols anywhere, and they're very confused. So the police start working on this theory. I'm just gonna hold my commentary until the end when we kind of get through all of these theories, because there's a few. And I don't know, to me, I'm just like, really police, that's the first theory we're gonna throw out? But whatever. Their theory is that the burglar comes in through a downstairs main level door at some point during the day, takes the 2 pistols that are underneath the pillowcases, and then hides in Mr. and Mrs. Collins' closet. Maybe possibly because somebody came home, or, you know, they didn't realize somebody was home or something, so they hide because they don't want to get caught. And then they wait until everybody goes to sleep, and then while they're in this closet for all this time, they have found the shotgun, and they have, you know, put it together now and armed it. They've had all this time, and then it comes time to get out. And as they're leaving, Mr. Collins, you know, starts to wake up, and they're afraid that they're going to get caught. So they shoot Mr. Collins and then run upstairs and escape from. So they think that they escaped out of a window or something from upstairs, because all of the doors downstairs are locked. That is theory one. That is theory one. I don't know about you, but I just think that that theory right off the bat is like, huh? Like, just hearing the only things that I've known so far, that I've shared so far, at that point I was like, really? That's what we're going with? But thankfully the police very, very quickly didn't stay on that theory and moved on quite quickly, because they also realized, like, yeah, that's probably not what happened. So they move on from this theory. Big reason being that, again, nothing was taken in the house. Like, no jewels, no valuables, nothing other than the missing pistols. And so they were like, probably wasn't a burglary, or they would have at least tried to have grabbed something on their way out, right? Around 9 p.m. that same night of the murder, that happened at 5:30 a.m. So now it's 9 p.m. that same day. Mrs. Mead, which I didn't get like 100% clarity of who Mrs. Mead was, but Mrs. Collins' maiden name was Mead, so I'm assuming it's like her sister or something. It's definitely it's Mrs. Collins' family, because her maiden name was Mead. So I'm not 100% sure who Mrs. Mead was, but I'm just kind of like assuming it's her sister, but it could be, I guess, a cousin or something. I'm not positive. But at 9 p.m. that same night of the murder, Mrs. Mead is upstairs, and she opens the upstairs hall closet to get a blanket. She pulls out the blanket, and she realizes that one of the missing pistols are within the folds of this blanket. So she immediately, tells the police and what. So once they hear this, the police are like, oh, okay, so new theory. They are suggesting that the intruder actually did come into the house for the sole purpose of murdering Mr. Collins. That he went and took the pistols, I guess, to make sure that they couldn't shoot back. It couldn't find where it says why. But that would be my assumption, why else would they move those pistols? But went and took the pistols, went to the closet, and hid while they were putting the gun together and everything, and then came out of the closet, shot Mr. Collins as planned, and then dropped the gun, ran up the stairs, and then hid in the closet upstairs because, he was startled by John and Grace, the kids, because, Miss Collins says she shouted for them, and they immediately, came out of the rooms and came downstairs, so that the intruder hid in the closet. While he's in this closet, he stashes a pistol in this blanket. And then once, the commotion's all happening downstairs and people are distracted, he runs down the hall to his escape, right? So that is their new theory. And Mrs. Collins, his wife, she likes this theory, okay? She's like, yes, that must be what happened. They ran upstairs, they hid, ran down the hall, and because she says there is a window on the second story that opens onto the roof of like their summer kitchen that's only like 1 story high. So they have a 2-story house, but it has an addition that is only 1 story, and that's their summer kitchen, and there's a window over it. And she thinks that he went out that window onto the roof, and then from the roof onto the ground, and ran away. So she is all on board with this theory, okay? That's what happened. But meanwhile, the town is just a buzz, right? Because again, everybody knows these people. He's very, well known in the community, and they have thoughts. Let me tell you, they have some thoughts. They think that James, Mr. Collins, killed himself. They think it was suicide, because they have heard that he did not have as much money as everybody thought he did, at least at the current time he didn't. Yes, he may have been like really wealthy at one time, but that lately, like, he wasn't, and he was suffering, and that he did this because he couldn't pay his debts, basically. And that he had life insurance policy, so he thought if he kills himself, that'll take care of his family. So the police do look into his finances, and apparently this is pretty true. He did owe quite a few people money, and in fact, it is said by a couple people that he had promised to like pay off some of his debts to a few of those people that morning, like Friday morning. So like literally the morning that he killed himself, apparently. So the morning of his death. So they were like, oh wow, like okay, so he really doesn't have any money. Like he is in a bad way with his finances, and he owes everybody money. And apparently he was telling people he was going to come pay them that exact day, but they couldn't figure out how because he didn't have any money. So they were like, But then the coroner comes in after, you know, examining his body and such, and is like, yeah, no, there's no way that he could have shot himself with the shotgun from like the distance that it was and hit the kinds of injuries that he has. Like, it's just not possible. Sorry about you, but he didn't kill himself. Like, this was murder. And so the police were like, okay, so I guess it's back to our first theory that some guy just wanted to kill him. But they can't think of anybody with a motive. Like, that's what's really getting them, is like nobody has a motive to kill this guy. Everybody seemed to love him. Like, even the people that he owed money to didn't dislike him or anything. And it didn't seem like anyway they were types of debts that were like crazy. I mean, they were just like legitimate kind of business debts, and people, yes, wanted their money, but it wasn't like he owed money to like gangbangers or something, you know what I mean? So they were just like, who could have done this? Like, literally, who could have done this? The citizens of the town were actually like, we got to figure this out. Like, we love this guy, this family. We need justice. We need to know what happened. Plus, with the police's theory, and they don't even have a motive, is someone just like running around like shooting beloved people? Like, what is going on? So the town itself and the, you know, friends of the family and everything actually start a committee to find justice for Mr. Collins. Like, that is how much they want this taken care of. And they reach out to a man in St. Louis at the time and ask him to come to Topeka and investigate Mr. Collins' murder. Like, they are serious about it. And he agrees. And he arrives like within days. He's there 3 days after the murder. He is already in Topeka, Kansas, and talking to the family members, examining the crime scene, and all that's going on. This takes him about 4 days to kind of just like interview everybody in the family and, you know, neighbors and all of that, and look over the house really well. And at that point, he is absolutely convinced that this is an inside job. And this is when I want to scream, duh? Like, where was the, like, really, like, police? Immediately, when I was like, when you found a revolver in the upstairs closet, nothing was stolen or touched, and the gun that was used to kill them is on like an extremely high shelf in their own closet, like, duh, right? Like, am I the only one that was just screaming inside job as soon as I heard what happened in the crime, like, without hearing theories? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I was just like, it's about time somebody knows what they're doing around here. But that's just me. And I guess the police, somebody on the police force had very extremely briefly like mentioned this theory about it, but then the only real suspect would have been John, especially at that time. They didn't feel like a woman could do it for sure. It wasn't Grace. It wasn't the 7-year-old niece. Mrs. Collins was shot herself. So like John was the only person that it could have been with this theory, and they were just like, absolutely not. You know, like, he's going to school at Lawrence to be a minister. Like, everyone loves him. There's just no way. He doesn't have a motive. Why would he even kill his father? They had a really good relationship. His father adored him, it seems like. So no. And they completely, like, they didn't look into it or anything. Like, somebody mentioned it and they were all like, reasons why not, and then it was gone. Well, this guy came in. Obviously he's not from the town and he doesn't know these people, and he's like, no, this was somebody in the house did this, like, faux show. And I'm just like, yup, tell me more. He also is like, gotta be John though, right? Like, gotta be John. And he wants to know more about old John, and he realizes he ain't gonna get nowhere in this town. I'm really sorry, this is future me, so my face is a little farther along and then it will go back, but I just like completely missed a whole important piece of information. So something else that made him very suspicious, that it was John in particular that was the insider that did it and not anybody else. He had actually discovered that John had become infatuated with Frances Babcock that he met at Lawrence. Like totally in love with this chick, okay? But Mrs. Babcock had told John that her mother had actually gotten a little cottage in Long Branch for the summer, so that they were going to be going and moving there. And John was terrified of this because he, again, is in love with her, right? And they weren't together. It seems that it was definitely like he was in love with her and she was just kind of there. He thought for sure, if Mrs. Babcock is apart from me, you know, John, for that long, she's gonna forget about me. But not only that, there's a ton of men that go to Long Branch in the summer, specifically apparently to look for women that have a lot of money, and then they try to, you know, get them to fall in love with them and marry them so that, you know, they can get their money. And he was like, I have to go to Long Branch too. I have to protect her, you know, from all of these just evil men that just want her for her money. Because John didn't have any money whatsoever. His father gave him $25 a month basically to live on while he was at school in Lawrence. But apparently he had been like showering Miss Babcock with, you know, flowers and entertainment and, you know, all kinds of things that he could not afford. Like, don't know how he was paying for this. So this really is where he started thinking, motive is possibly money, you know, insurance policy payout, you know, winning Miss Babcock. So, okay, resume. So he sends one of his operatives, Mr. Manning, to go to Lawrence where, you know, John was going to school, to just kind of like very quietly just kind of like feel out who John was, what he was about, kind of get some information, right? And he finds out that he has been kind of patronizing and, you know, yelling at, making scenes with these hack drivers, which I had to look up. Maybe that's common knowledge to most, but I had no idea, never had heard it. And basically, it's a taxi driver, but it's a horse and buggy. Who knew? Not I. And he, yeah, again, he had been like really into some disagreements with these three hack drivers, and I guess they were bad enough that like people knew about it because he found out. So he reports this back to his employer, and his employer is like, okay, and he reaches out to a man named Del Harbo. I think that's how you say it. Don't come for me if it's not. But he reaches out to him specifically because Mr. Harbo has actually lived in Lawrence for like many years prior to this, and he was a hack driver as well when he was in Lawrence, and he knew who these men were. Like, they had been prior acquaintances, like not necessarily like besties or anything, but he knew who they were, so he already had kind of a rapport with them right off the bat. So he sends Mr. Harbo to Lawrence to, again, just kind of see what he can really figure out from these hack drivers, like what was going on, because everybody says how wonderful and nice, you know, Mr. John is. So then why is he giving these hack drivers such a hard time, right? Like, what's going on? So Mr. Harbo does go to Lawrence and reconnects with his old hack driver buddies and finds out very quickly. Apparently they were pretty darn open, and it didn't take too much like pull in their leg to get them to talk, and they come right out with it, and they say that the reason John has been heckling them is because they had entered into like a verbal agreement to kill his father. Like, John had come to the hack drivers, and the hack drivers had agreed to kill John's father for a certain sum of money. I couldn't find anywhere where it said actually like how much money. It just said a certain sum. So I don't know, but for a certain sum of money, and that it would be done by a certain date and time. And the hack drivers say they literally like never intended to do this, but John had agreed to pay them like half of the money now and then half after they had done it. So they were just like, what a great, you know, we'll just take his money, you know, his half of this amount, and not kill his father, you know, we're basically gonna hustle this dude. And so the day came and went that they had set, and his father was alive. So John comes back, obviously very heated because his father is still alive. And he's upset about this because he's already paid these guys a certain sum of money. And they were like, yeah, we've been thinking about it, dude, and it's murder, so we're gonna need some more money. Like, we're gonna need some more money. And John's like, okay, fine, I'll give you $100 more. And he gives them the gold watch that his father gave him for his 21st birthday. And they were like, okay. And they redecide on a new date that they are going to murder his father on after taking, you know, more money and his gold watch. That day comes and goes, and his father is still alive. And so John goes back, and he's just like, what the heck, guys? Like, I've given you everything I said I would. Like, kill my father. And they literally, what I read, and I don't remember if it was an article or somebody, it was somebody's article. Literally it stated, they coolly told him, I don't know, and like C-O-O-L, coolly told him, and I don't know if this means like cool in 1898, if that means the same thing as it does today, but I picture it as them just like chilling, leaning back on their horse and buggy taxi, like, yeah, dude, no, we're not, like, yeah, we're not gonna do that. Never was. But it said that he coolly told them that they had never intended to kill his father whatsoever, and that they were just taking his money. And they basically were like, what are you gonna do? Go tell the police? Like, but seriously, what are you gonna do? Not instant. It's not like you can run to the police and be like, yeah, these guys took my money, but they didn't kill my father like they said they were. So they feel pretty confident, like, they're gonna be fine. And again, they're telling Mr. Harbaugh all of this. So Mr. Harbaugh then goes back to his employer and is like, dude, listen to what I found out, and tells him the whole story. So then he obviously decides that he needs to reach out to the prosecuting attorney in Lawrence and tell them all of this information. So then the attorney in Lawrence reaches out to the county commissioner in Topeka, where the murders actually happened and where the family lived, to tell them all of this information. And it is decided that they are going to arrest John, like, pretty much immediately, right? But still, honestly, the police in Topeka aren't super happy about this. I wouldn't say happy about this. I think mainly because they were just completely dismissed it, and then this other guy came in and was like, you did it, dude. Anyways, the trial was like huge, and it attracted a ton of attention. All the media was covering it. There were lawyers coming to the trial that had nothing to do with the case. They literally just wanted to watch the case, and the lawyers that were like defending and prosecuting, because they were, both sides had like heavy hitters, like top-notch people. And it's said that like the legal battling in the courtroom was some of like the best and finest legal battling ever. So like lawyers were coming just to watch like the lawyers basically. The prosecuting attorney, his wife's father was a judge in the Supreme Court in Washington, okay? And he even comes down to just watch this case. Like, and yes, I get that he's like kind of related to the lawyer, but I highly doubt that he, you know, took a break from being Supreme Court judge in Washington to come and watch every single one of his trials. But he did for this one. Like, he was there just to watch. Like, that's how intense this trial was. So the defense's strategy for John is that Mr. Harbaugh the one that went and talked to the hack drivers, you know, and got all this information and then reported back, that he and his employer and all of those people that really figured it out, that they were employed by the insurance agency. And basically were just out to get John, because if they could prove that his son murdered him, they wouldn't have to pay out, because he was one of the beneficiaries. It was said to go split between his wife, his daughter, and his son. This obviously is very quickly disproved, as the actual townspeople had formed a committee and hired these people to figure it out, and they literally had no connections whatsoever with the insurance agency, which is pretty easy to prove when you can prove who, you know, hired you. So I don't know if the defense is, I mean, honestly, they probably are grasping at straws. Like, what are you gonna go with? The hack drivers, all three of the hack drivers, actually take the stand during the trial and, you know, lay out everything that happened and the plot, and that they never actually planned on committing this murder, but that they wanted to take his money. Like, they are just completely forthright with all of this. They also produce the gold watch that John gave them, you know, when they went back the second time, because they hadn't killed, you know, his father, and they gave him more money and the gold watch that you know, his father gave him on his 21st birthday, which is crazy, right? So apparently both Mrs. Collins and Grace Collins, John's mom and sister, never believed that John was guilty. Even during like the entire trial, John had like a private cell. His mother and his sister like furnished it with like actual furniture and bedding, and brought him in books. They brought him supper like every single night and visited with him all the time, like convinced that he did not do this. So Grace actually testified at the trial as well, and she swears that she heard somebody run down the hall upstairs, and then she also heard John get out of bed. So she swears like she heard two separate people. Like, she heard somebody run down the hall, and then she also heard like John get out of bed, and that when she came out of her room, John was coming out of his room at the exact same time. So she's like, there's just no way that he could have done this. However, the trial did last just over a week, and John was found guilty. So he was sent to Kansas State Prison to wait the governor's basically setting of his execution date. However, I guess in Kansas, the governor never sets an execution date. It's just something they didn't do. Like, yes, he was sentenced to death, and the governor is to set the date, but the governor never does that, like, with anybody. It's just kind of like known that they will spend the rest of their life in prison. However, with John, he actually only spent 10 years in prison. I couldn't find out why or anything. Like, when I read the articles, it literally just kind of stated like he spent 10 years in prison, and when he got out, he moved to California. So I don't know. I don't know how he got out so early, but he did. So by 1920, he's actually married to a woman named Grace Fowler, who was a stenographer, and they live in Santa Monica, California. He actually returned to his first love, which was the church, where he was a practitioner for 25 years. And John died in 1945 at 67 years old. So, I mean, it seems like he still had a pretty darn good life after all of it. I'm pretty sure my makeup look didn't turn out anything like Bailey's, mainly because I kind of completely forgot how she did her eyeliner in that picture. And I don't know, it was really hard for me to like do my makeup and talk about crime, but we'll say that this look is inspired by Bailey Sarian. It is a yellow eye with a dark brown lip, okay? So it's not completely different, but anywho. Other than that, what do you guys think? Because I have a few things. So first off, like, yeah, I think the police probably like didn't actually do the best investigation as possible, because they just, I think right off the bat, just like didn't want it to be John or like the family in general, because again, he was so loved, right? But I actually think what happened is not anything that they talked about. Like, I mean, I do think John committed the murder 100%. Like, I just don't the fact that he was killed with his own shotgun that was kept on like such a high shelf within that closet, and like the guns were missing from under the pillowcases and nobody knew where they were, and then they were upstairs, like I don't know, it had to be inside, like it had to be an inside job, right? But I don't necessarily think it was because he just like wanted the insurance money to win over Miss Babcock necessarily. But here's what I think happened, mainly because of how the mom and daughter are so adamant that he didn't do it and that it was somebody else, which it just doesn't make any sense, like whatsoever. Like none of the doors or windows downstairs were tampered with, they were all locked and secured. And even though they were like, could have went out of this window over the summer, you know, blah, 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 that Mrs. Collins is the one that suggests that's what happened. I just, again, don't think that's plausible. I don't know how, if Mrs. Collins said as soon as he was, you know, shot and the perpetrator ran out of the room, that she runs over to her husband and immediately yells for John and Grace, and they come out of their rooms. I just don't know how they wouldn't have seen the intruder. You know what I mean? Like, if he's running up the stairs, which had to have been what happened, is all the doors and everything were locked, and the way like the gun was laying in the hall, like angled, it just like he was running that direction is what it says. So if he was running up the stairs, like how did they not see him? If they like immediately come out of their rooms and don't stop to get dressed or anything, because John had to go back up later to put clothes on, so we know he like apparently immediately came out, how did he not see him? Like, even if he like ducked in a closet, like I just don't think it could happen that fast. Plus, if Grace supposedly heard somebody run down the hall and then hear John get up, how come she didn't like hear anything when the person left, if her ears are that good? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just struggle with the fact that anybody else could have been in the house and done it. And if that is the case, then I feel like Mrs. Collins and Grace they have to be lying, like, in my opinion. Like, first of all, how did Mrs. Collins not even see the intruder whatsoever? And she swears, like in the trial, she swore that she did not know who did it. Like, she didn't, like, that she saw the person, but she didn't know. She couldn't tell you who it was. I don't know. In my opinion, she had to have, like, I don't think it was an intruder. And if it was somebody that was in the house, she would have recognized them. So it's, I don't know. Seems suspicious to me. And another thing is, if they didn't see him, like, and if that is the case and it was somebody in the house, then I feel like Grace has to be lying, right? Like, she wouldn't have seen her brother come out at the same time as her. Not enough time had passed for John to have apparently ran up the stairs back into his room and back out before her. Like, she came out lickety split and John was there as well. So you would have seen the person. Like, they would have had to have run right past you or been in the process of trying to hide in the closet. Like, I don't feel like that's the case. So I feel like she's lying. And if that's the case, why? Why would you try to protect your brother who's just killed your father, who, again, at all accounts, was a very loving father and husband and like treated them fantastically? Like, there was no reason or ill will that she would want him dead either. So why would you want to protect your brother that you think killed your father? Why would your mother? I guess I could kind of maybe see why a mom would want to protect their child. I think it would be hard still if like they murdered your husband. But again, also not her child. Like, you remember, it's his child, which I get. Like, she probably loved them just as her own, and it seems like she did, but still, like, why would you want to protect somebody that's killed your husband? I don't know. So then it makes you think, why, again? You know, like, why would they want to do that? So if they are telling the truth and John didn't do it, like, who did, right? Like, what even slightly makes sense? Nothing to me, but I definitely want to know if you guys have theories that you think make sense of somebody else that could have done it. So, like, if Mrs. Collins and Grace are not lying and it's not John, who do you think did it, and why? Because nothing was taken. So like, why would they want to kill him? But I think that he did do it. And I think that Mrs. Collins and Grace both knew that he did it. And not only like knew, but like were kind of in on it. So I think they knew their financial situation. I feel like James, Mr. Collins, probably came to Mrs. Collins and was like, we don't have any money. Like, I owe all these people money. I don't know how to do it. And I'm sure, I mean, if they're running low on money, how are they going to continue to pay for their son's living expenses and college? And you know what I mean? Like, so they probably started talking to their kids about it, because like, what are they going to do? I mean, they're going to notice if it's not like you can hide the fact that you're broke. So I kind of feel like this plan was kind of hatched, so to say, that he was gonna die. Like, that somehow it needed to be that James died so that they would get the insurance money and be able to pay off debts and, you know, live comfortably as normal going forward. And I'm sure that was like hard. Like, of course, like it's crazy to even think about, like in any situation that I'd be like, you're gonna have to kill me so that you guys can live. But like, if he really was such the loving and caring and amazing person that it seems everyone in the entire state of Kansas believed him to be, then maybe that is something that he would do, would literally sacrifice himself to take care of his family. But you can't commit suicide and get your insurance paid. So somebody had to be like, kill him, right? And I think this is where they kind of decided, like, they would pay somebody to murder him, and then his family would be taken care of. And when, you know, if it turned out that like the hack drivers weren't gonna do it, and remember that apparently James, Mr. Collins, was to like meet with people on the morning that he was murdered to pay them back. You know, time was up, which is why they had set like a certain date that the murder had to happen by. And so I think that's why, you know, John went to Topeka that evening before, because he knew like time's up and my dad has to die. Like, so as much as it sucks, I think John killed him to follow through with the plan. I think kind of what happened is that they just did a really poor job of making it look like a burglar in general. And I don't know if like there maybe was a better thought out plan, or maybe if John himself just like, maybe his mom and his sister did think hack drivers, and his sister maybe didn't know, but I think his mom definitely had to know this was going on. And maybe, you know, knowing the hack drivers weren't coming, but maybe the rest of the family did think that that's still what was going to happen, and only John knew that he was going to have to actually kill his dad. And that's why the scene was not very well thought out for a burglar or intruder type situation, because John, obviously, it didn't seem like he was the murderous type. So when he went and killed his dad, he didn't know what to do, and he just ran back upstairs. And then later, when, you know, everything happened, and maybe talking to his mom, and they were like, why did you do it? Like, what happened to the hack drivers? And then they kind of thought out their plan. I don't know. Again, that is all 100% speculation and just my thoughts. But I kind of think that it might have been like a group family effort just due to their financial situation. But again, I don't know. Tell me what you think. Do you think that's even possible, or I'm just like crazy way off base and I've just myself watched too many true crime stories and am thinking insane things? Like, do you think he actually could have done it in general? And if you do you think it was because of some crazy plot like me, or do you think it was simply because he wanted insurance money and to try to go woo Miss Babcock and, you know, sweep her off her feet? And I don't know. Tell me what you think. But I thought this was a doozy. And I know in 1898 they don't have like the forensics that we do today, and it would probably be a completely different story if this happened today, obviously. But I just felt it was like just so interesting, and the case and the trial and everything, it just seemed like it was so huge at the time. I don't know, I thought it was a good one, and I didn't see it covered Not saying it hasn't been, but I didn't see it covered. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know. Again, definitely tell me your ideas in the comments below because I want to read them. I am so intrigued. I hope you enjoyed really watching me struggle hard doing my makeup while telling this story, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts below, and hopefully I'll see you again soon, but no promises. Bye.